Thanks for joining me, Chevy Cool Lady, as we delve into a little-known but highly effective memory-enhancing journey. Many memory contest champions report using this technique to recall faces, digits, and lists of words. Please like and subscribe. This keeps the cool content flowing. Also, I ask you to stay with me till the end to avoid misunderstandings. If this is your first time here, you have found a safe place to share ideas and learn about interesting things. Please consider subscribing. If you are a returning sub, I love you all. You are the coolest.
The method of LOCI is a strategy for memory enhancement, which uses visualizations of familiar spatial environments in order to enhance the recall of information. The method of LOCI is also known as the memory journey, memory palace, journey method, memory spaces, or mind palace technique.
It is the term most often found in specialized works on psychology, neurobiology, and memory, though it was used in the same general way at least as early as the first half of the 19th century in works on rhetoric, logic, and philosophy. The method of LOCI, an imaginal technique known to the ancient Greeks and Romans and described by Yeats, 1966, in her book The Art of Memory, as well as by Luria, 1969. In this technique, the subject memorizes the layout of some building, or the arrangement of shops on a street, or any geographical entity which is composed of a number of discrete loci. When desiring to remember a set of items, the subject walks through these loci in their imagination and commits an item to each one by forming an image between the item and any feature of that locus. Retrieval of items is achieved by walking through the loci, allowing the latter to activate the desired items. The efficacy of this technique has been well established, as is the minimal interference seen with its use. The items to be remembered in this mnemonic system are mentally associated with specific physical locations. The method relies on memorized spatial relationships to establish order and recollect memorial content. It is also known as the journey method, used for storing lists of related items, or the Roman room technique, which is most effective for storing unrelated information. Many effective memorizers today resort to the method of LOCI to some degree. Contemporary memory competition, in particular the World Memory Championship, was initiated in 1991, and the first United States Championship was held in 1997. Part of the competition requires committing to memory and recalling a sequence of digits, two-digit numbers, alphabetic letters, or playing cards. In a simple method of doing this, contestants, using various strategies well before competing, commit to long-term memory a unique vivid image associated with each item. They have also committed to long-term memory a familiar route with firmly established stop points or loci. Then in the competition, they need only deposit the image that they have associated with each item at the loci. To recall, they retrace the route, stop at each locus, and observe the image. They then translate this back to the associated item. For example, Ed Cook, a grandmaster of memory, describes to Josh Foer in his book Moonwalking with Einstein how he uses the method of LOCI. First, he describes a very familiar location where he can clearly remember many different smaller locations like his sink in his childhood home or his dog's bed. Cook also advises that the more outlandish and vulgar the symbol used to memorize the material, the more likely it will stick.
The technique is taught as a metacognitive technique in learning-to-learn courses. It is generally applied to encoding the key ideas of a subject. Two approaches are: link the key ideas of a subject and then deep learn those key ideas in relation to each other, and think through the key ideas of a subject in depth, rearrange the ideas in relation to an argument, then link the ideas to loci in good order. The method of LOCI has also been shown to help those with depression remember positive, self-affirming memories. A study at the University of Maryland evaluated participants' ability to accurately recall two sets of familiar faces using a traditional desktop and with a head-mounted display. The study was designed to utilize the method of LOCI technique, with virtual environments resembling memory palaces. The study found an 8.8% recall improvement in favor of the head-mounted display, in part due to participants being able to employ their vestibular and proprioceptive sensations. Sources recommend that the method of LOCI should be integrated with other forms of elaborative encoding. Elaborative encoding is a mnemonic system which uses some form of elaboration, such as an emotional cue, to assist in the retention of memories and knowledge. In this system, one attaches an additional piece of information to a memory task, which makes it easier to recall. For instance, one may recognize a face easier if character traits are also imparted about the person at the same time. However, due to the strength of spatial memory, simply mentally placing objects in real or imagined locations without further elaboration can be effective for simple associations. A variation of the method of LOCI involves creating imaginary locations, houses, palaces, roads, and cities, to which the same procedure is applied. It is accepted that there is a greater cost involved in the initial setup, but thereafter the performance is in line with the standard LOCI method. The purported advantage is to create towns and cities that each represent a topic or an area of study, thus offering an efficient filing of the information and an easy path for the regular review necessary for long-term memory storage. Something that is likely a reference to the method of LOCI technique survives to this day in the common English phrases "in the first place," "in the second place," and so forth.
The method of LOCI, MOL, relies on spatial relationships between loci, e.g., locations on a familiar route or rooms in a familiar building, to arrange and recollect memorial content. An example of MOL would be to remember a grocery list by mentally placing items needed in well-known places in one's bedroom. To recall the list, one would mentally revisit the bedroom and pick up the items. The point of the link system is to link each successive pair of items in an interacting image or story so that recall of one item in the list should cue recall of the next. These stories or images have to be significant in order to remember the assigned information associated with it. For instance, to remember the following words: chicken, orange, shoe, and school, one creates a narrative such as, "A chicken ran down the hill in orange shoes to get to school." This process of creating a story attempts to make it easier for a person to recall words that had little to no correlation beforehand. The link system can also be used when learning a new language. The pegword method is based on principles like those embodied in the method of LOCI. The main difference is that instead of a series of places to be used as storage locations, one memorizes a set of pegs or hooks on which one can then hang the information to be memorized. As with the MOL, instead of placing grocery items in a room, imagine that room has pegs on which are the items desired to be remembered. PAO, person, action, object. In this method, one assigns a person, action, or object to each item one desires to memorize and creates a storyline out of these items to make them easier to recall. The more distinguishable the relationship, the easier it will be to retrieve. New information and stimuli tend to be better remembered when they can be associated with old memories and experiences. The efficiency and success of encoding and subsequent retrieval is largely dependent upon the type of associations you choose to make. It is generally accepted that the more unusual and meaningful these elaborately encoded memories are, the more successful one will be in trying to retrieve them. This process is referred to as elaborative encoding. This type of encoding helps learning as it constructs a rich set of integrated memories. Several theories suggest that the ability to recall information is heightened when physical and mental conditions match those experienced when the information was first encoded. For example, one will often be more successful in recalling a stimulus while chewing bubblegum if one were also chewing gum when one originally encoded the new stimulus. This has also been found to encompass drug and alcohol-induced recollection. People who encoded memories in an intoxicated state were more successful at recalling them when in a similar state later on. Verbal elaboration has also been shown to strengthen mental connections and boost retrieval. Because the intensity and effectiveness of encoded connections varies from person to person, it is often difficult to study with consistent results. Jennifer Cohn, 2013, sought to determine whether difference in age can influence the effectiveness of elaborative encoding. She hypothesized that older adults do not normally use elaborative encoding, and younger adults are constantly studying and learning new things through semantic processes, so younger people would have a much easier time recalling elaborated information. She also theorized that applying the study methods of young adults to older adults may have a similar effect on the participants' ability to encode information. Cohn tested a young group and an older group using 44 unique word pairs. Cohn used 3 different subcategories to test both groups: deep processing, study, and study test. Participants in the study group were allowed to study each of the word pairs in any way they chose for both sessions. The study test group worked similarly, except that instead of simply memorizing, they were tested during the second session. Elaborative encoding was truly tested on the participants in the deep processing group, where the participants were asked in the first session to create similarities between the word pairs. In the second session, they were asked to create a mental image that combined the word pairs. The results of the experiment showed that age overall did not significantly affect the performance of the older group as compared to the young adults, even if the young adults did slightly better. In a study performed by Karpik and Smith, 2012, for experiments were conducted with elaborative study conditions based around mnemonics. The experiments consisted of using imagery-based keyword method for experiments 1 and 2, a verbal elaboration method for experiment 3, and identical word pairs in experiment 4. In experiment 1, participants learned uncommon English words paired with their definition and were divided into 3 groups: repeated retrieval, repeated study, and drop. After each correct recall in the drop group, the pair of words were removed from future study and retrieval tasks. After each correct recall of the repeated study group, the word pairs were removed from the study groups, but not recall groups. After each correct recall of the retrieval group, the words were removed from the recall groups, but not the study groups. Subjects were asked to recall the word pairings 1 week later. Experiment 2 had the same design as the first, but 2 differences and had the same results as the first experiment. Experiment 3 had similar procedure with Swahili English word pairs, but had a 4th group, repeated elaborations. The results of experiment 3 showed that long-term retention was more effective with repeated retrieval than repeated verbal elaborations. Experiment 4, the subjects were asked to learn word pairs and had different cues for target words, or cues that would act as the target word. Results showed that repeated retrieval enhanced long-term memory, and mnemonics do not stem from elaborations, unless it was for the first recall. The experimenters do not undermine the effects that elaboration has on a person's ability to learn. It just did not apply in this experiment. Elaborative encoding is a beneficial tool to save and recall information. Since connections can be made whenever any new stimulus enters our perception, the scope of things that can be encoded is nearly limitless. In a practical sense, actively relating new information back to previous knowledge expands and intensifies the web of memories and mental connections. Elaboration has proven to be very effective when encoding names, faces, and locations. The ability to recall encoded memories has also been a useful tool in diagnosing mental disabilities, such as Alzheimer's disease. Type mnemonics are often an effective way of transferring information into long-term memory and being able to recall it easily in the future. However, since most people do not actively train themselves on mnemonics, after it has proved its usefulness, these skills become less effective with age. Another method of elaborative encoding is sometimes referred to as the link system. By this method, individuals associate new information and stimuli with rich and exaggerated memories in order to make them easier to recall. I want to thank you all for joining me. If you learned something, please smash that like, subscribe, and come back to me next video.
LOCI.